everybody, and welcome to the 11th episode of Coffee with Keira, the exciting podcast where I chat with different people about their careers to teach teens about potential jobs. I'm Keira, and joining me today in the coffee shop is David Legault. We'll be discussing his career as a former submarine officer and a current senior operations engineer for Pioneer Natural Resources. See you inside! Hey David, thank you so much for joining me for coffee. How's your day been so far?
Hey, Keira, you're welcome. Thanks for inviting me. So far, it's going great. How about you?
It's been going well. I've just been doing school. Where are you calling from this afternoon?
I'm actually calling from Dallas, Texas, where I live.
Yep, I live like not too far from you.
hmm
What's in your cup this afternoon?
I've got a cup of turmeric tea. It's one of my favorite types of tea. How about you?
I have orange juice.
Uh-huh.
Disappearing. There
Okay.
we go.
You actually drink coffee?
Nope, I really don't like coffee.
I didn't think so.
Yeah. Um, you've had some very important jobs up till this point, so I would like to talk to you about your current role and go back and talk about your previous all through your career. But yeah, because I'm really interested in learning from post high school graduation how you got to this point.
Sure, sure.
So, what is your current role and what type of company do you work for?
Sure. So I work as an engineer for an oil and gas company.
Mhm.
It's called Pioneer, and we are headquartered in Las Colinas, which is, I believe, pretty close to where you live.
Yeah, I didn't know there was that close to us.
hmm
So, what do you do there? Like, what's your job there?
My full title is operations engineer, and my day-to-day looked a lot different before COVID as it does now.
Yeah.
So I can tell you what I did before, and then tell you how it changed afterwards.
Okay. That'd
Um,
be great.
so before I would go into the office, typically our hours are we'd work 9 hours Monday through Thursday,
Mhm.
9 hours per day. And then on Friday, we would have a half day, which
Mhm.
I really liked always having half day Fridays. In fact, today's a half day. I'm off of work right now, and it's great.
Nice.
Gives me some time to be able to meet up.
Yeah.
And so in the oil and gas industry, as an engineer, we spend a lot of time with oil and gas wells. Do you know much about oil and gas wells?
Not really.
I can tell you a little bit. So most people, of course, are familiar with driving the car,
Yeah.
filling up the tank. So the gasoline that you fill up on your tank, that comes from oil, that comes from oil wells. Same thing if your home is heated by gas. Do you happen to have, is your stove, is that a gas powered stove or an electric stove?
Yeah, it's a gas power stove.
Gas powered stove. So the gas that's used to power your stove, as well as the gasoline, the liquid that's used that you put in your car, and other types of fuel like diesel,
Mhm.
jet fuel to be used to fly planes, and even a lot of consumer products such as plastics and plastics is the main one that people think about. All those are derived from petroleum products or oil and gas products. So all these oil and gas wells that I work with are out in West Texas. Have you heard of the city of Midland?
I think we've driven through it and I've seen all of the pumps. Uh,
Yep, you've seen all the.
yeah.
Now I brought a picture of a pump jack. I
Okay.
don't know if it's going to show up. We'll try. We'll see here. Can that? No, it's not really showing up. That's
No.
okay.
So like
Uh,
the arm, kind
yeah,
of.
it's the pump jacks that go like
Yeah.
this when you're driving through. Yeah,
Hmm.
so Midland is covered with those.
Hmm.
And my job really is to oversee the production of the oil that's coming out of the ground.
Okay.
And I communicate with the guys out in the field. I've got a foreman who's in charge of all the wells. and I take care of the engineering aspect of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you kind of also a project manager because you look over all of it?
Yeah, you can think I do a lot of projects, but my title isn't project manager
Yeah.
officially.
Hmm.
But like a typical project that we do is when they drill a new well, they
Yeah.
have to turn it on, so to speak. Basically, open it up,
Oh. Hmm.
and and I'm in charge of helping to get that opened up. And then once it opens up and the oil and the gas come out of the ground, I'm in charge of making sure it continues to flow. If something happens, sometimes something happens on the surface and we have to, maybe the pump dies,
Yeah.
then we do whatever we can to bring it back to life.
Okay. Is it dangerous working with the gas? Like, do you guys use fire or anything so that explodes or something?
It's funny you mentioned that because that was something I was worried about when I first thought about going into oil and gas. There are inherent things that are naturally dangerous about oil and gas, but actually the least safe thing that we do, or the unsafest thing that we do, is drive. Driving is far more dangerous on
No.
the job than it is working in the oil and gas industry.
Huh.
So uh, safety of safety is a big part of our culture. We talk about it every day,
Hmm.
and it's inherently. I keep on saying inherently. That's probably too big a word. Um, it's naturally very. It's not as dangerous as people would assume.
Yeah. I just always kind of assumed it's dangerous because it's
Yeah.
gas. So,
Hmm.
how long have you been working there?
I've been working for coming up on 8 years in
Wow,
January. Hmm.
nice. So, I think you talked about it a little bit, but what do you do day in and day out?
Sure, I can give you some more details. Um, in fact, the day-to-day stuff is very similar to what I do to but pre and post COVID. The main difference is I'm working from home. I
Yeah.
actually have not gone into the office at all
Oh,
since the pandemic started in March.
do you
I've
like
been
that
working from home.
or no?
No, there's some good thing. Overall, I really do like it because I get a lot more time in my day. I'm not having to drive
Yeah.
and it gives me a little more freedom.
Mhm.
I do like it, but on the flip side, I do like to see people.
Yeah.
And I'm actually going in the office for the first time next week, so I get to do that.
Fun.
Yeah, but the day to day for me is it starts kind of early. We start at 7:30 with our meetings, and we have our morning meetings. And what those involve are talking to the guys in the field to find out what problems they're going through.
Uh-huh.
And we have certain projects with wells that have problems where we have to fix them.
Hmm.
And so we meet with them every day to talk about, okay, which wells are the ones that we're working on? How are they going? What's the progress of fixing them?
Hmm.
And then we have another meeting where we talk to the guys about the wells that are producing that have no
Yeah.
problems, but maybe there might be some other issues going on in terms of uh, production's a little bit low. We're not making as much oil, but we can do some things to increase it.
Hmm.
And so I talked to the guys about that. And then after that, uh, there's different meetings throughout the week. We've got some monthly meetings where we check on certain things like how much are we spending
Hmm.
from month to month, because it's easy to spend a lot of money and realize the more you spend, the less you're actually going to profit from it. So we got to keep
Yeah.
track of our expenses.
Hmm.
And um, in my company, I'm one type of engineer. I'm an operations engineer, but
Hmm.
there are actually multiple different types of engineers. There's
Okay.
reservoir engineers, completions, facilities. And so a lot of the other meetings throughout the week are meeting with these other groups, the landman, um, regulatory, and making sure everybody's on the same page with what's going on. But I
Hmm.
would say I spend a lot of time on the phone talking to my foreman.
Okay.
And I didn't expect to be on the phone so much in my job, but I actually really like it because it helps me to develop that relationship with the guys out in the field.
Yeah.
So that's my typical weeks in and day out. And I was doing it before working from home. I was actually um, in the office, but flying out to Midland twice a
Um,
month. So I would fly to Midland and I would work with my foreman face to face.
mhm.
And then they have company trucks. We get in our trucks and we drive out and go to the wells and see what's going on and maybe interact with the guys in the field to see how we can
Yeah.
help.
So when the things like malfunction or something, do you like physically go and fix them with tools, or is it like,
Now, I'm an engineer, so I don't typically turn wrenches or anything like that. That's more for the guys in the field.
hmm
Um, but yeah, that's a good question. So there are a lot of problems where it involves, say, opening up the pipes and
yeah.
fixing a leak.
hmm
Maybe a pump goes down and they have to fix the pump, or there's a hole in the tank and they got to patch the tank. But
hmm
a lot of times the problems are even bigger, where they have to, and I don't mean bigger like dangerous, but bigger as in more expensive,
Yeah.
where they have to actually pull all the pipe out of the ground
Oh.
that's in the well. And that's an expensive process because the wells, it's kind of hard to believe, but the wells themselves will go down about 2 miles under the ground.
Whoa.
So you've got,
It's a
think of how
long
long
pipe.
it, think of how long it takes you to run a mile.
Yeah.
So imagine 2 miles underground worth of pipe. And if there's a leak in the pipe underground, you got to pull
All up.
2 miles of pipe out of the ground. And that's expensive.
How long does that take to pull it all out?
It'll take about half a day.
Okay.
So 4 or 5 hours to pull everything out of the ground.
Cool.
Hmm.
So once you get the oil from the ground, do you guys like sell it to the gas stations, or how does that work? How does it
That's
get
a good
there?
question. No, we don't sell it directly to the gas station because there's a middleman, and
Okay.
those are the refineries. And
hmm
what they do is it's the oil that comes out of the ground. It actually, you've probably heard the term crude oil. Crude meaning like um, unrefined. It just means that it
Yeah.
hasn't been turned into gasoline yet. And it
hmm
comes out actually as oil, water, and gas all mixed together. And
Um,
and when we take it and we split it, oil, water, and gas,
hmm
we sell the oil, we sell the gas, and we get rid of the water.
Oh, okay.
And then we send the gas to a gas facility. They take that, and that's the type of gas, not gasoline, but gas that goes to your stove and
Yeah.
heat your home. And
hmm
then the oil goes to the refinery. Those are the middlemen, and they take it and then they break it down into a whole bunch of different liquids like gasoline and jet fuel and diesel and other types of oils. And
hmm
then eventually it'll go to the gas station. But we don't control that. We sell
Okay.
it to the refinery
Okay. You mentioned that you had to fly down to Midland like twice a week, or I think
twice
I
a
got
month.
that right. Oh,
Mhm.
twice a month. Um, but is that how as far as you traveled for your job, or and how often do you travel for it?
I've gotten to travel. So Pioneer actually at one point had oil and gas locations and wells all over the world, in
Oh,
Africa, in South America, and Alaska. But when I joined, they had they had reduced that down to just the United States, and it was within the United States, including Alaska. And
mhm.
then over the years, they've sold everything off, and now we're only in Midland. So
Oh,
I only really travel to Midland, but occasionally we get to travel for other reasons, for like training. Going to Colorado, I think, was my favorite. There's actually a lot of oil and gas companies and production in Colorado too.
okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. What are some of your other hobbies, and do you have time for them?
Uh, Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time for hobbies, but that's mainly because not because of work, but because I'm also in school right now.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm working on a graduate degree at the same time while I'm working, so I don't have a lot of time. But
Mhm.
what I do enjoy doing, I love running, and I also love to read. And even in the busy season that I'm in right now, I still make time to actually go run and read and get a little workout in.
Yep. Those are like two of my favorite hobbies too. So,
I see all the pictures of you playing soccer.
yeah. And I do cross country now. So I have a meet tomorrow.
Wow, yeah, I get to see those too. That's great.
Yeah. What is the best part of your job?
Best part of my job is definitely the people that I work with. And I'm talking about not just the other engineers, which awesome, great guys and girls, really smart. I feel challenged all the time when I go into work, and mainly just great people. It feels good to go to work, wake up every day, and know that you're working with some great people that I would spend time with them outside of work. I'm happy to spend time with them outside of work. I like them that much. And then in addition to that, the guys out in the field, you develop a real close bond with them because you're working with them every day. You're tackling problems. You're doing what you can to uh, get the oil and gas out of the ground. And um, oil and gas. I know that's controversial right now in the time of an election season, but at the end of the day, I think we all really appreciate it because it makes our lives a lot easier. We all enjoy driving our cars. We all
Yeah.
enjoy feeling comfortable inside our homes.
Hmm. Can't wait to drive. And then I'll have to
Mhm.
get gas all the time.
Yep.
What are some of the challenges of your job?
Well, the hard part about my job is that there's a lot that's demanded of us. And we have to do, there's a lot of day to day activities, but then projects on top of that. And
Mhm.
so just the total quantity of work that we got to do every day, there's more than enough work to do in a day, and sometimes it feels like you're constantly behind, but you
Mhm.
just got to focus on the most important stuff, and that helps to keep you from getting too stressed out. But the hardest part of my job is definitely the total amount of work that I got to do.
Mhm. Would you say a major characteristic you have to have is problem solving?
100%,
Mhm.
yes.
Yeah.
Because so problem solving, uh, it looks a lot different in school than it does at work.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing I learned transitioning from school to work was that in school, there's always a right answer. There's always like, this is the right answer, right? And you
Mhm.
check it to make sure you get graded.
Yeah.
Well, when you get to real life and you get to work, there's maybe not just one right answer,
Yeah.
and you gotta problem solve
Mhm.
and be able to figure out what are the multiple different routes we could take and what's the
Yeah.
best one for everybody.
Yeah. I love real life problem solving, and it's so much better than just getting an exact answer.
It is, yeah, it allows you to be more creative too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What's your best memory from work?
um, I've got one that I've been thinking about, and so there was a time where my dad and I were invited to speak at our company,
Yeah.
and part of that was because my dad and I had gone on this journey of trying to improve our diets together. And my dad had seen a lot of improvement in his health where he got off lots of medications. He's diabetic, so he's got off his insulin and
Mhm.
lost over 50 pounds.
Whoa. That's so
Other,
good.
yeah, reduced a lot of other medications like blood pressure medication and high cholesterol.
Mhm.
And my company invited me to speak with my dad on that. And
Yeah.
it was I got to speak to all my coworkers, and there were about 50 of us, 50 are there in the audience, and it was just a really special moment to be able to speak with my dad at my company.
Mhm. So if we go back to how I like started it, post high school graduation, can you describe the path that got you here?
Yeah, sure. When I was in high school, I don't know what your favorite subject is. What is your favorite subject?
Math.
Math.
Well,
Okay.
I don't really like geometry, so I don't
Okay.
know.
Yeah, some people they'll like algebra or they like geometry
Yes,
more, but you
algebra.
definitely like algebra more. Okay. Well, it's funny you say that because math was my favorite subject too. And I liked math and I liked chemistry. I think those were my two favorite.
Hmm.
And as I did a little bit more studying and figuring out what can you do, I realized that engineers, a lot of times people are really like math and science go into engineering.
Hmm.
I decided I think I want to be an engineer.
Hmm.
I started looking up what schools are really good at engineering. And of course, Texas is real strong with engineering schools like UT,
Hmm.
Texas A&M, Rice. But I sort of wanted to shoot the moon and see what about like a big name school like MIT. And so I applied to that and it was my shoot the moon school. But then once I got in, I decided, you know what, I got to take advantage of this before they change their mind. I ended up going to MIT in Boston. And when I was there, first I thought I wanted to do chemical engineering because I loved chemistry in high school. But then as I got to uh, learning about the different majors, for whatever reason, nuclear engineering sounded really exciting to me because I thought
Yeah.
this sounds really cool. I bet you that we're going to be the future of energy in the United States is going to be more and more nuclear,
Yeah.
and that's just something I wanted to go into. So I did nuclear engineering. And the only thing is that school like MIT and really college in general is very expensive. And I was not interested in taking out loans for, at the time, it was $40,000 per year. So
Oh.
I thought, I don't want to take a loan out for $160,000. Let's see what I can do to help pay for it. And the only, I applied to a bunch of small scholarships that were local, but it wasn't a lot to make a dent in how much MIT cost. And the
Yeah.
only thing I could come up with that said it would pay for everything was really to join the military. And I decided that if I did the Navy, I could join the ROTC program in college, and then they would pay for all of my tuition.
Oh.
And I thought, okay, this involves a commitment afterwards, but it's worth it to have a free education from MIT. Um, I had no idea what I was signing up for. I'll tell you. And a lot of people who do ROTC, they ask me, well, did you do junior ROTC in high school? Have you heard of junior ROTC or JROTC?
What is ROTC? Stands.
Oh, yeah, ROTC stands for the Reserve Officer Training Corps. All that means it's a long explanation for you're an officer in training to be
Oh.
the Navy or
Mhm.
whichever service, Air Force, Marines, Army, whichever one you decide to go into.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I decided, heck, I'll join the Navy. My granddad was in the Navy. My dad wasn't in the Navy, but we'll see what this is all about. And at MIT, studied nuclear engineering up in Boston. Really fun place to be and learn, and met some amazing people I'm best friends with to this day. Um, but the downside, of course, is Boston is super cold. It was a shock living in Boston. Some
That's
of the
why I
worst.
live in Texas.
Right. It was refreshing to come back to Texas and not have to have such brutal winters. But when I was at MIT, I decided, as I mentioned, I did nuclear engineering, and once I graduated, I I had to figure out which community in the Navy to go to, and I decided to go into submarines, which um, within the Navy you can go surface ships, typical. You can fly jets. You could fly other types of planes. You could even within the Navy you can join the Marine Corps too. But I
Yeah.
decided for me, submarines was the most appealing, which may sound crazy, but of all the different communities, it seemed like it was the best for engineers.
Yeah.
And because they were looking for people who had technical ability and were good with math, good in science, and could understand how everything worked. And I joined the submarine community, and that was a long time ago. But once I finished up MIT in Boston, I was in the Navy. I was an officer, and the best part about the Navy, there's a lot of great things about it, but I got to see the world. I got to live in a bunch of different cities. So I I started training in South Carolina, did that for a year, lived in Charleston, which is a wonderful place to live. Then I lived in Washington State for 3 years, and that's where I was assigned to the submarine and uh, worked as an officer on the submarine. And we would go out to sea and do these missions and get to pull into these ports like Japan and South Korea and Singapore and get to explore the countries when we were there, and then get back on the submarine and go out and do our missions. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then eventually fly back home. And I did that for 3 years up in Washington. Then for when I was done with that, I came to North Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
back on the East Coast, but the other Carolina. Before I was South, now I'm North Carolina, and I went to Duke University. I was still in the Navy, but they need people who can be ROTC instructors for the college students at that particular college.
Oh,
I went back to be an instructor for what I did at MIT. And
that's cool.
it was a lot of fun because I got to teach a class in basic naval engineering to the students at Duke. So
Mm-hmm.
these are students who are in the ROTC program and training to be officers. I got to talk about my experience. And at the same time, I worked on a master's degree at Duke. So I was in school while also at the ROTC program. Um, the whole time I thought, you know what, Navy's been a great experience, but I really prefer to come back home. And I think I'm ready to well, basically switch careers. I didn't see myself staying in the Navy as a career. I didn't want to stay for 20 years and retire. I was more interested in doing other things. So when
Yeah.
I was in North Carolina, I decided to look for a job to come back home to Texas,
Mm-hmm.
which um, have you lived in Texas your whole life, Keira?
No, I lived in California for 5 years and
Oh yeah,
then
you
moved here.
you were born in California, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And then y'all moved to Texas?
yeah.
Yeah. So I started looking for jobs to come back home and decided, you know what, what's a good engineering field to get into to
Mm-hmm.
get back to Texas. I knew oil and gas was strong, but I was open to anything engineering related because that was my background. And the nice thing about engineering is that you can kind of switch from one engineering to the next because there's a lot of similar skill sets. And I literally, no joke, just typed into Google best companies to work for in Dallas Fort Worth. And on the in Google, they came up with, DFW's top companies to work for. And at the time, Pioneer was number 2. And I grew up in Dallas and I didn't even know what this company was all about. So I learned a little bit more about it and realized I think this is great because it would bring me back to Dallas.
Yeah.
And it's a really highly rated company. The problem is I didn't know anybody that worked there. I didn't have any oil and gas experience. I just had nuclear engineering experience. So what I did was I went on LinkedIn and I looked up people at Pioneer that I might have a connection with on LinkedIn. And it turned out there was one guy that had a Navy connection. And so I
Oh,
would connect with them on LinkedIn. But that was, and I connected with someone else in North Carolina too, who happened to know someone who worked at Pioneer. So I had 2 connections. And that's really the trick to helping you to find a job is just start to
connections.
network and talk to people and tell them what you're interested in. And that helps you to get a connection to someone that works at that company. So that helped to get my foot in the door.
Yeah.
And I actually started off working in Midland.
Oh,
So it wasn't really what I was anticipating. I was hoping to come to Dallas.
yeah.
They said, if
Got
you're,
you back eventually.
I knew I was going to come back eventually. And they said the best place to learn oil and gas is to be in Midland.
Okay.
And I decided I'm happy to go to Midland for a certain amount of time, as long as I get to go back home to
Yeah.
Dallas. And the funny thing is, I actually really loved living in Midland, and it was a great community. Got plugged in with a really good church when I was out there, and decided to fly back. After a year and a half, I moved back to Dallas, and been working at the headquarters here in Las Colinas, and that's when I first got to meet all the Fadleys when I came back to Dallas.
So that was when you like first moved back?
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I was part of y'all's home group, it was
Oh,
when I had first moved back from Midland.
oh,
Yeah.
I was little, or not little, but I
Yeah,
don't remember
you're
very much.
little.
This goes back a bit, but what's the coolest place you went on the submarine?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of cool places that I went. I think my favorite was probably Japan. We pulled into a city called Yokosuka. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, Yokosuka, and it's basically close to Tokyo.
Mhm.
And then I had a friend that was in the Navy station in Japan, and we met up and I got a group together and we went hiking and traveling all throughout. I had a really great memory of getting to explore Japan.
Do they actually have really good sushi, or is that a myth?
They did. In fact, I would say it was the best sushi that I've ever had. Ironically, the town that we were in at the time, it was really hard to find sushi. Uh,
Oh,
they had a lot of noodles and they had a lot of other traditional Japanese type food, but we had to really search for it. And we eventually found it. It was a very small place, but it was the best sushi that I've ever had.
yep, the hole in the wall places usually have the best food.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love sushi, so I really want to go there.
Yeah, me too. I love sushi.
What's the longest you were ever underwater in the submarine?
Well, I get asked that question a bit. I would say the easiest way for me to answer it is uh, short answer, about a month.
Whoa.
And with the amount of time that you're underwater, you typically think of it like a more important question for me is how long am I leaving before pulling in somewhere? And typically when you leave a port, it's
Mhm.
not long after that you go underwater. 'Cause submarines designed to operate more efficiently and effectively
Yeah.
underwater. So I'd go underwater, and I was on a mission where we were underwater for a month.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's not terribly long because I know some people who are underwater for longer periods of time,
Yeah.
but it's enough for you to kind of go stir crazy where
Yeah.
you want to see the sun.
Yeah. Be claustrophobic just sitting down there.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
How big are your like sleeping areas?
Not very big. Have you ever slept on, well, think of it like, so a twin bed is definitely larger than what we had. Think of it more like the size of a cot. Have you ever slept on a cot?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's about the size of a cot. We call them racks, and they would be stacked. So you'd have in my room, you'd have like either two racks on top of each other or three, and you'd
Oh,
be sharing a room. It's a small room with a couple other officers.
oh.
Mhm.
How big is it? Like,
How big is the submarine? How big around?
yeah.
Yeah. Um, it's best probably for me to compare it to something, but the
Yeah.
type of submarine that I was on was 50 feet wide, which is a lot wider than most people think. A lot of times people
Yeah.
think,
I think they're like tiny.
yeah, I think most people maybe have seen some pictures of some old World War II submarine, or maybe
Yeah.
they've gone on board and toured a submarine and they thought, man, I can't ever do this. Well, old World War II submarines are a lot smaller.
Yeah.
I think people imagine, say you like on an airplane, that's what people imagine because you're walking down an airplane and usually there's maybe two seats on either side and they think, oh, this is about what a submarine would be like.
Yeah.
Submarines are way bigger.
Oh.
They're so 50 feet, imagine, on either side, and then 4 stories tall, 4 stories
Oh.
tall. And then if you were to get an idea of how long they are, if you were to take the submarine and then put it vertically and stack it right next to the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C., my submarine would be a few feet taller than
Oh
the
my
one.
gosh. I
So
did not think they were that big.
they're huge. They're over 560 feet long. So just imagine, almost 2 football fields in length.
Whoa. Well, for someone who's interested in this, what would you say is your advice on schooling that you should take? Like, what's your approach on it?
Sure. Are you talking about engineering in general, the
Yeah,
Navy,
engineering.
just engineering?
Sorry, I kind of
Yeah.
just jumped.
Yeah, no problem. Because I've sort of had 2 careers, one with the Navy and one with oil and
Yeah.
gas. But both of them were engineering. And I'd say if this is something you're interested in, um, first of all, do you like math and science? Do you like those subjects? If
Yeah.
you do, then you're going to enjoy being an engineer a lot. If you don't, you may not enjoy engineering all that much.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first question. And then if you do, then start to think about what schools have engineering programs
Mm-hmm.
and what they're looking for. And in fact, like even as a freshman, what you could do is go to, research some of the schools that have engineering and download their application and see what are they asking for.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see a lot of them are very similar. They ask for standardized test
Yeah.
score, essays, your,
Mm-hmm.
your GPA. So definitely work as hard as you can in school to get good grades in math and science. But the important thing is you want to be well-rounded. You
Mm-hmm.
don't want to just be a math and science nerd and not be able to read well and not be able to write well too.
Yeah.
Um, I'd say in general, if I were to just sum it up in terms of general advice to be able to do well in engineering, but not just engineering, I think any field is you go to school, you work hard, you get good grades, you know how to do that. The problem with that is that you're so focused on being really good at a formula, brilliant, like performing on tests, but real life is not always like that.
Yeah.
And to succeed in your job, you have to be really good at communicating and relating to people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say as much as you can throughout your time in school, work on your relationships with people and improve your communication ability. Take on positions of leadership
Mm-hmm.
that force you out of your comfort zone, where you have to speak to people, where
Yeah.
you have to communicate your ideas. Those types of things will be so much more valuable in the long run than if all you're good at is taking tests.
Yeah. Would you recommend in getting into engineering, should you get an internship, or is that something you'd recommend?
I did not do the traditional route of going to work where a lot of people go to college and then straight into a corporate environment. I went straight in the Navy, which doesn't require an internship.
Yeah.
But if you were going to go to the traditional route, yes, I would recommend when you go to college, um, starting your freshman year, start thinking about what major do I want to have. If
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of different types of engineering, and start to think, do I want to be a chemical engineer? Do I want to be a mechanical engineer, a civil engineer?
Yeah.
And then once you figure out what route you want to take, then think about what company offers internship. And most colleges have career fairs where they are looking for interns and take advantage of those career fairs. I will say, so I'm a my job right now is a petroleum engineer, but I did nuclear engineering, and those are very specific types of engineering. My recommendation in terms of job security, uh, if you're a mechanical engineer or a chemical engineer or a civil engineer or even an electrical engineer, like those types of engineering jobs are more widely available.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a really specific type of engineering, there may not be as many jobs available. And who knows the future of oil and gas right now with
Yeah.
with the election coming up, I wouldn't necessarily recommend going into petroleum engineering. You could go into mechanical engineering and still become an engineer in the oil and gas industry.
Mhm. If you hadn't chosen this career, what would have been your next choice?
I definitely wanted to get out of the Navy. And I had considered what a lot of people who do submarines decide to go on to work at a nuclear power plant. And I had thought about doing that. And it sounds kind of strange, but a nuclear power plants, there's not as many of them. There's about 100 in the United States. But the disadvantage of them, the thing that probably convinced me that I didn't want to do this, is that most of them are in really like podunk towns that away from the city, because no one really wants to have a nuclear power plant in the middle of a city,
Yeah.
right? They're scared of them.
Just
They're
go.
not they're not dangerous inherently, but in order for me to do that, I would have to live in a really small town, or maybe live in Fort Worth and drive down to Glen Rose. And I thought, I don't know if I really want to do this.
Long drive.
A long drive. And so the reason I didn't do nuclear is that I just decided I was looking to do something completely different. And it
Mhm.
was too similar to what I was doing before. A lot of people from the Navy who do the nuclear part of the Navy,
Mhm.
when they leave, they go into work in civilian nuclear power plants. So that culture comes to it. I was looking for something completely different.
Mhm. Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years?
Well, I told you that I was working on an MBA right now.
Mhm.
And I'm now spent more years in oil and gas than I did in the Navy. And I thought, you know what, every 7 to 8 years or so, it seems like it's a good time to change careers.
Yeah.
um, I'm still working for the same company, and I plan to for uh, the time being, but I wanted to do an MBA to open up my options just in
Yeah.
case. There's a lot of uncertainty with oil and gas, as we
Mhm.
talked about.
Yeah.
I thought if I were to lose my job, it would be good to be able to transfer to a different industry. And
Yeah.
so, have you heard of an MBA, Master's in Business?
I think I've heard of it, but not like specifically what is it?
Yeah, most people in high school have not heard about it, and they're not thinking about it because it's beyond college. But think of it just as a master's in business, and
Mhm.
what it does is it gives you some experience in how businesses are run, which is
Mhm.
common to all industries. And
Okay.
for me, it would give me the opportunity to switch to something new if I wanted to. I
Yeah.
could switch to um, I could switch out of oil and gas and maybe go to renewables. Maybe
Mhm.
I would probably stay in some form of engineering, but I
Mhm.
could start my own business if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Something fun, but it gives me some more options. So
Yeah.
5 to 10 years down the road, I think I could see myself continuing to oil and gas, maybe working my way up to different positions in leadership, or I could go into a different industry, or I could start a new company.
Mhm. Well, I've had a great time chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining me. And
Mhm.
I'm really interested in engineering, so this has been great.
Excellent.
Cheers.
Here's to you. Thank you, Keira. Thanks for
Thank
making this.
you. Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. See you next time on Coffee with Keira.